Today we're working with imaginary numbers, and imaginary numbers deal specifically with negatives inside of a radical. Let's do a little bit of review here. We've got the square root of 16. This is our radical here, and radical is another term for a square root, if you will, these square root symbols. But the square root of 16 would give us 4. Now if we looked at the square root of negative 16, we have to look at this and what two numbers multiply together to give us a negative number. So what number, I should say, multiplied by itself would give us a negative number. And so, well, 4 times 4 would give us our positive 16. And negative 4 times negative 4 would still give us a positive 16. So that wouldn't work. So we have this, and this is a complex number here. It's called an imaginary number. And the same thing is true. This would equal 4i. That's my attempt at an I, okay? This is an imaginary number, 4i. And an imaginary number, the square root of negative 1, is an imaginary number. So all we basically did here is we took the square root of negative 1 times 16. Square root of 16 gave me my 4. The negative 1 is my I. So that's my imaginary number. So let's look at a couple more here. If we did the square root of 36, negative 36, our answer would be 6i. Okay? Now, we can get a little bit more complicated if we look at the square root of 12. Well, square root of 12 is not a perfect square. So we can break this apart here and find out our factors. This is 4 times 3. Well, 4 is a perfect square. So this is the same thing as the square root of 4 times 3. And we know what the square root of 4 is. The square root of 4 is 2. So this is the same thing as 2 times the square root of 3. This is in its simplified form, but still into the radical. So I could take this same information here, only instead of being 12, I'll go negative 12, the square root of negative 12. Well, we know that this is still going to be a 2 square root 3, but the question is with that negative inside. And what we talked about before was that negative inside, we can write as an imaginary number. This is the same thing as the square root of negative 1 times 12. And negative 1, this is the big thing, the square root of negative 1 is I. That's an imaginary number. So I'm going to break this apart here. 4 and 3. So this is equal to I times the square root of 4 times 3. My I came from here, that's my negative 1. 4, I know that the square root of 4 is 2. So this would be 2I square root of 3. This is 2 times I. And typically you'll write any sort of letter, any of the variables, anything after the number. So it would be 2I square root of 3 would be my answer on this one. And let's look at one more then. Let's go the square root of negative 20. So first of all, we know that it's got the negative. This is negative 1 times 20. 20, my factors of 20 are 4 times 5. Okay? So now I know I'm going to have a I square root 4 times 5. And 4 is a perfect square. That's 2. This is going to be 2I square root of 5. That would be my final answer.